I woke up, like I really woke up for the first time, and that's what the initial being there, the initial getting into that space, is like waking up for the very first time. It really truly is, and in a way that I sometimes imagine my next time dying is like it's like riding on a roller coaster that I've been on before that was pretty scary. They've added maybe a few extra loops on it, so I'm still kind of scared and don't know exactly what's going to happen. But I did this before, but you don't know what's going to happen in this next one. So it's still like an anticipatory feeling, but it's like exciting and exhilarating and a little bit of anxiety too.
Welcome, David, and thank you very much for joining me on my show.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So, can you tell us then how this near-death experience happened to you?
Yeah, I was just leaving work one day, and the week before, I felt the sting, which was clearly the heart valve ripping. But the way I guess the nerves are work is that the pain was in my back and in my shoulder. I didn't feel anything in my heart, so I just kind of went on about my life because I've always had back pain because I played football and I damaged a lot of my vertebrae, you know. So I just was like, oh, my back pain just kind of got worse. And then 7 days later, I was leaving work and I could just feel it getting worse. Like the sting was worse. I could feel fluttering in my heart, just different stuff going on that I knew just it wasn't right. It started eventually affecting my breathing, and and I when I got to the hospital, by the time I got to the hospital, I was like trying. I had to breathe really deep just to stay aware and to have a conversation with them about me. I'm no, this is my heart, I've shared this before, but the guy was really adamant about me signing the paperwork and stuff, insurance stuff, and I didn't, I don't even think I had insurance at the time, but I didn't. I was like, I can't sign any paperwork. I can't even think clearly. It's hard for me to even stand up, basically. And I got really like, angry with him, and I cussed him out really bad. But after everything was over, I did go back to him and I apologized to him, and he was like, "Man, there's no need for apology. I could understand, if you feel like you're dying, which you ultimately did, that how you would be feeling that way." So it's like he was basically, there's no need for apology, but I still felt bad because I think after I understood what I understood from the near death experience, how emotions and energy works, is like I had an extreme amount of emotion directed at him, and he didn't deserve to feel that he was doing his job. So I really felt important. It was important after, because at that point I just had some stents put in my heart because they didn't know that the valve had ripped at that point. So after all of that, I was able to get up and move around, and even though the valve was still ripped, I was able to move around for another 3 weeks before the follow up appointment occurred. And that's when I kind of really, really explained to the doctor, the cardiologist, how it felt and everything. And he immediately, his eyebrows raised, and he called for the scans, and he went back and looked at them and said, I think your heart valve dissected. And I was leaving the checkup, and then he told me to turn around, and I was annoyed because Atlanta traffic is horrible, and it was in the middle of traffic, and he said turn around, and I turned around. I mean, at first I told him no, like I'm not, man. I'll come back tomorrow or another day, and he was like, no, you need to turn around, and so I turned around, and when I got there, he explained to me that he think my aortic valve dissected and that it could unravel. Your heart literally could unravel, um, and the fact that you're alive walking around, he said that's even, like that's just the luck of the draw because 75% of the people who have this kind of dissection, he kind of was suggesting these numbers to me. I don't know how true they are. He said they usually die, you know. But that was 3 weeks after the stents were put in, so I was still going around with a dissected valve. That was three. Now, then he told me to go straight to the emergency room, straight to the heart center, um, up at Piedmont, and which was a north. I drove, there. Went in. He told me to give somebody a piece of paper that was a order for an emergency scan from my chest. And I got there. I had some more problems with a person at the window being really rude. And a doctor came out of nowhere. It was like a superhero. And he, he just grabbed the papers and said, give me the papers. And he snatched the papers from the person, and we just ran upstairs. I was getting scanned within minutes of just walking, in that area. That I think they were made aware that I was pulling up, and they confirmed that I had a dissection, and I was starting to feel better, so I was kind of annoyed that this confirmation meant that it was a guarantee that I had to have a surgery. I was like, nah, I feel all right, man. Maybe I don't have to have surgery, because I'm actually scared. My chest is, they're talking about my chest being cracked open. I'm like, all right, I don't really want to do this. I'm not gonna make it through this, and but the doctor had a great surgeon. He explained it to me like, he said your valve is ripped and it's ripped down into the stem, of your heart. Um, into your heart some, and he was like, the muscle is just, there. He said, but it could unravel at any point, and when it does, the blood is just going to be pouring out into your chest cavity, and so he said, there's no really avoiding it, and it's really just a matter of luck that you're still alive. But I still had to wait another couple weeks until the blood thinner that I was given after the heart attack had got out of my system, because I would have bled out if they'd have did the surgery, while it was still in my system. So I'm just laying in the hospital waiting for this blood thinner to leave, and I'm still feeling good. And I'm like, man, are you sure that I need to have surgery? And he was like, the heart valve. He just went back to the conversation, and I'm just, because at that point I was kind of just joking, just expressing the anxiety. I knew that it was necessary based upon the first explanation, but yeah, that was scary. He was an amazing surgeon. He allowed me to play. He told me to choose the music that to play while I was under, and I chose Fela Kuti, and I enjoyed it. And for the moment that the 10 seconds before the anesthetic took effect, I enjoyed it. So, and then I was out, and when I woke up, it was still Fela Kuti's music playing. So it seems as though he truly played that music throughout the surgery, which was to me remarkable. I thought that was almost fascinating. Like, that's weird. But but it was a vibe, and I think even coming out of that, and the pain that I was in, and the confusion I was in, to hear it somewhat still it brought me back, to where I was before. I've never really shared as many of these details about the surgery, but this is interesting. Some of it is because I remember opening my eyes and having a tube down my throat, and the doctor at that moment explaining to my family that he's going to probably panic because the tube. And then me thinking to myself, like, why didn't they tell me that I was going to wake up with the tube in my mouth? Like, why would they be telling me this as I'm waking up panicking with the tube in my mouth? So in my mind, I couldn't breathe, but in reality, the tube was pushing oxygen into my lungs, and I didn't really have to breathe. But the idea that was difficult for me. So I panicked, and I asked for a pen and a paper so that I can explain to them that I can't breathe. I wanted to write that I can't breathe. And I don't know whether it was I wasn't supposed to wake up in that moment or not, but before he even came back with the pen and the paper, I was already back unconscious. So, but I just remember waking up feeling the tube breathing for me and just being freaked out by it. Like in my mind, I was couldn't breathe. You know. But I didn't. The recovery from the surgery was rough. I didn't want to live. I quit on life multiple times. One of the worst moments, I remember waking up sneezing, and it felt like my chest just exploded open. But it didn't. But it just felt that way, and I just was screaming. The pain was so intense. And I just, like I said, I just didn't feel like. Some thoughts were like, why would they even keep a person alive and put them through something like this? Like, this is ridiculous. I would have been better off to just go. And so I think the surgery was so traumatizing for me that I didn't get a chance to actually process the near death experience that happened 5 weeks prior. The recovery from the surgery kind of kept me. I didn't even have, like, I had, my body was on zero. I didn't have any mental capacity to think of anything other than living. Um, Not much else was on my mind but living and dying. I got not thinking that I was going to live, but trying to trying to just keep hope together in some capacity, even though I was losing it, here and there. Um, but eventually the pain started subsiding, and I started feeling a little bit normal physically, but I was still weak. Still a lot of pain in joints and shoulder and area, like I guess from being in the bed, kind of like that. It took a long time for some of the pain, the physical pain, to just kind of ease up, and I'm still feeling some of the pain. It's just extreme, but sometimes. But 3.5 years after that, I started talking about it on the Clubhouse app.
So it took you 3 years to talk about it. You didn't want to talk about it right away. You thought they looked strange at you, or you just wanted to keep it to yourself.
It was difficult to talk. It was difficult for me to understand. It was
But
difficult
can
to,
you describe the actual NDE? How happened? You left the body. You went to the tunnel and all that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't even get like until I started talking about it more. All of the details didn't even come to me. So that was the reason why I mentioned that 3 year gap, was because I was kind of just stuck in this feeling of wanting to go back there because I remembered how I felt. But some of the details I kind of wrote off as I was drugged up, I was losing my mind, I was dying, whatever it was. But when I started sharing it and people started, I remembered everything with extreme clarity, and now even it gets clearer and clearer and clearer. My whole life now even gets clearer and clearer and clearer because I'm being asked to share it, which is a privilege, that people are interested enough in a person's life where they get to talk about their life enough to where they can investigate their life and see themes and patterns and things that they wouldn't have gotten to do if no one was interested in their life. So that's surreal in and of itself that people are interested. So the near death experience was like, it's when I was in the emergency room for the heart attack. Um, I kind of just floated above my body, like as I actually when I got to the emergency room and I got in an argument with the guy, and I he he seemed to maybe have called somebody to help as I was arguing with him. So because they seemed to come out of the door as I'm kind of getting really upset, and I get on the gurney and like I would say seconds, no more than like 30 seconds, I was already kind of passing out. But I remember laying and kind of rolling to the left, like just to get comfortable. I was just rolling to the left to get comfortable because I don't know, I was pretty cool with whatever happened. I didn't really necessarily think I was going to die, but I wasn't at odds with that idea. So I laid and I rolled to the left, and I remember the last thought I had is this is going to be some good sleep, and I closed my eyes. And from there, I wasn't in the area where they were going to, where they were resuscitating me yet, but I saw the doors, and then I saw Blackness. But once we got through the doors, I could still see where the people were aligned, and it was Blackness. But where people were standing, it was almost like static, like energy and black dots, and that I could feel. Even though my body wasn't really working, my eyes weren't really working. And then very quickly after that moment, it was like it's like I was still dying in that moment, and because stuff was still, I could still hear my reference point or my vantage point still seemed to be even with theirs, you know. But then very quickly, my reference point was above everybody on the ceiling, looking down at myself, my dead body, them trying to resuscitate me, them panicking, um, and me coming to some real calm and composed realizations about what was happening. Like, he's dead. You used to be there. His mind is dead. His body is dead. His ego is dead.
So you were looking at your body on the gurney, and you were not associating yourself anymore with that body. It was like somebody else. You didn't care
It
about it.
was. I knew that it was important. Like I was living there, and that it was my experience on this planet was through that body. But the way that I was seeing it, it wasn't through any kind of attachment. It was like that experience is over. And then what was even crazier is that the next sentence that came to me was, "Your personality killed you." Your personality killed
So now you were floating above, and you see that body. How old were you back then?
you. All right, I'm 46 now, so that was 2017. So that's six
About
years.
40
So
years.
40, about
40.
40. I actually think I turned 40.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're looking at that body that you lived in for 40 years. You got degrees. You were thinking about yourself that you are very smart. You are an activist. You are genius. And then it's everything is right there laying on the garden. It doesn't mean anything for you. It's just everything disappeared,
Yeah,
and you felt all this like lightness, and your consciousness was suddenly very clear, right?
yeah. Zero weight of any human concept, any connection to being a human at all. It was gone. Any connection to David's identity was gone. Um, I could sympathize with him or feel compassion for him, or love for him, but it wasn't like that was me dying. It was like me realizing that, and it was kind of like almost like that. For me coming back, it was almost like one of the thoughts that I had is that um, if I do die from this heart attack, is that what I understand is now is that I've missed an opportunity. You know, I missed an opportunity, and I actually thought I was going to die during the heart surgery and after the heart surgery. So I was so some of the depression might have been almost like a realization, like a really deep realization that I missed an opportunity to have a beautiful human experience.
What happened after that? So you floated a little bit over the room. You're looking at your body,
Yeah.
and what happened after that?
I'm watching, like I said, I'm coming into some realizations like about just me being the cause of my own, death. And then I just kind of casually look up at the ceiling, and then I'm in space, and or in a really dark, dark blackness, and and that in that blackness, it felt like it the blackness was alive. There were words that I really couldn't make out, but a lot of words coming from it. It felt like love. It felt like it was embracing me and not really threatening at all. It felt the same way people describe the light. It felt like everything else. Everything felt like love to me, but that blackness was so much more dense and alive than everything else, and more interactive. Like it spoke, it clarified, um, it was just very dense and to the point where it felt like something tangible. And I've heard other people say velvet, and I could agree with that. It felt kind of velvety as you move through it, and then I was looking down at it, you know. So
Now you say you heard words. This blackness had words. What kind of words? Do you remember the
I
words?
couldn't really make out specifics. It's kind of like everything. It felt like the blackness felt like everything. So if there was anything specific that could have been made out, I don't really know if it would have had any value because it was like a knowing of everything while I was there. So the specifics didn't matter. It was like I had in that void. It felt like you had access to every thought, every idea, everything. So any specific word didn't. No specific word stood out when I was in that void. You know.
Okay, but you knew everything. You say you knew everything when you were in that void. When you came back, you forgot everything that you knew over there?
No, I don't think the body can hold that at
Okay.
all. I don't think because I did try to. I was still in depression, and I just wanted. I didn't want to. I didn't have suicidal ideation, but I just wanted to go back there, and so I did like a meditation, and I kind of felt the space, and it was so overwhelming that it's almost like electricity was going through my body almost like a seizure. And my eyes were watering, my body was stiff, and I could see it from above. But I was happy, but my body didn't look to be in a healthy state. So for me, my conclusion from that is that some of that, some of the information that we have access to, just because we are who we are, some certain people have certain abilities to move to different parts of their brain, right side, left side, whatever it is. Um, some of us don't really know, we can't ground it, and so just having access to certain spaces in certain contexts, especially while you're still grounded in a body or rooted in a body, is not the healthiest stuff to engage. And we have to get more clear on what we're doing. I think sometimes because and we have to be clear on what part of what type of information are we communicating with. You know, because there is some, even within my own experience, there were moments of um, I was on the verge of mental illness because these concepts were still in me in ways that I could not ground, and they are still in me in ways that I cannot ground. But when I engage that space, I know I'm in that space. So I don't have to talk to anybody when I'm in that space. I can just engage that information in its abstractness and its chaotic kind of way, and just if there anything that I can pull back and ground, then I will talk about it. But if I can't pull anything back from that space and ground it, it's not worth talking about. It's just almost the same way that people can get kind of caught up in the wow and the magic of the experience, but not in the groundedness of any kind of understanding of it.
Okay,
You know,
so you said space and you said void. I don't know. Is it difference between void and space?
very,
You were first in a black void and then you moved into space. Can you describe me a little bit in detail that too?
very different. They very different. The space, the area in space is interactive. Even after I went through it and was looking down at it, the same characteristics were present in it. I could look in it. If there was any confusion, the confusion was completely and utterly cleared up by just looking in it, and it didn't do anything extreme. It didn't present full images or words or anything when I looked in it and got the instant clarity. But there would be movement, sometimes like twirls, and sometimes colors would change. But just that movement, those color changes, those swirls, I got instant clarity, and I don't know how to translate that out, with a human brain, but I knew what those movements were in that state, and there was no time between the question or the confusion and the clarity, just looking in the void. And it was pretty much that same kind of clarity generically that exists just in being there. I kind of had clarity about everything, and the things that I looked out at and wanted to know what it was, as soon as the question was asked, the distance between me and that thing would disappear, and I would know what it was.
Okay, so you
Instant,
just
instant.
the second you thought about it, you were there. You were that specific thought.
Yeah,
You became the
yeah,
thought. So now,
yeah.
when you were there, you said you had this tremendous clarity. When you came back, you don't remember anything, but you remember the feelings that you had.
The feeling, deep feelings. Certain words were stuck in my mind, like love,
Okay,
faith, hope, responsibility, a deep sense of responsibility for the collective, for the whole.
right.
Um, those things were stuck in my mind, even when I was still like a deer, caught in headlights, not knowing what in the world had just happened to me. These words were stuck in my mind, like etched. And in the early interviews, I mentioned them a lot because that was the only thing I really deeply, deeply, deeply brought back and grounded, into my circumstance with those words like love, hope. Um, Charity is basically what deep sense of responsibility is, perhaps. Faith, you know, like, and those words just were way more important to me. And when I heard people say them, especially in certain conversations, in certain contexts, I knew that these people were talking to me in a different kind of language than what it was typical, and I listened differently when they would say these certain words. So
Okay, so you heard except words, it was silence, it was music, it was noise. How do you describe that? I know it's hard for you to describe, but
I can't say that I recall hearing any music or noise at all. It was kind of just me in space, enjoying everything I was seeing. If there was any sound, the sound was the least. I don't remember the sounds. I just don't. Other than like maybe a humming sound of just like a humming sound. But other than that, I don't remember much sound. But the colors of the star forming region, I did. There was when I got into that space after I came out of the black hole, the um, the light that people speak about was up and to the right, and the emergency room was down and to the left, and I was kind of just looking out in front of me, and there was a star forming region that was absolutely beautiful, red, white, and blue, but the red would radiate down into like pink and then white, and then the same with the blue, and then the white was kind of around as well, and then you could see the dim lights of the stars forming inside of this, and I knew that this is where stars are born, and that was a thought that I had. Oh, this is where stars are born, and then I watched that for a while because I thought it was beautiful, And I think that's important, even in the context of what of the spiritual stuff that a lot of the times we talk about. I think some of it is really deep and is related to just as much related to those types of regions in space as it is to any ideology that we and black holes and how things come move. Understanding of black holes and star forming regions, I think will help us understand what a soul is and how the processes that light and ideas go through. You know,
Now
so
it's interesting that you mentioned the humming sound. Now the Eastern teachings coming from thousands of years from India and so on, they describe that the universe is the same humming sound. It's Om sound of
yeah,
Om.
I could say if there was anything that I heard, it was that, and that
Yeah,
was it.
yeah,
Not much more than that.
right.
But it was like it could be a buzz or a hum.
Yeah,
That
it's a
would be the
Om
only
sound.
thing.
That's
Yeah,
what they say. Yeah.
that would be the only thing. But I was so more. I was the fact that I was still actually having an experience to me was overwhelming. Like I was like a child. I was like a child. Everything was wow, and all that I was going to do there, all the way up until the point I was resuscitated. All I was doing was looking at different things and just traveling through space and like a child, like really enjoying it and feeling all of this intense love and it was so beautiful like that dying and I say this often like dying was the best thing that ever happened to me because it I woke up like I really woke up for the first time and that's what the initial being there the initial getting into that space is like waking up for the very first time it really truly is and in a way that I sometimes imagine my next time dying is like it's like riding on a roller coaster that I've been on before that was pretty scary. They've added maybe a few extra loops on it, so I'm still kind of scared and don't know exactly what's going to happen. But I did this before, but you don't know what's going to happen in this next one. So it's still like an anticipatory feeling, but it's like exciting and exhilarating and a little bit of anxiety too. And but that it's like a roller coaster ride for me. And I'm so for me the next time I face it, it's going to be with that same type of enthusiasm, you know.
So, are you afraid of that now, or are you just kind of looking forward to it? I
I'm
mean,
not afraid of death. Nobody likes pain, so I'm not gonna sit here and act like I'm some X Man or something like that. Yeah, but the idea of leaving this body, or and however it happens, I mean, whether it's good or bad, fun, slow, or whatever, the idea of leaving this body, I don't have any anxiety about leaving this body, and I also know that some of the stuff that we fear in terms of pain in the process of dying is not a real fear because you seem to leave the body before the body gets to such extremes. You know, you seem to leave the body before it gets to extreme. Once it's cataclysmic, I think the soul is pretty aware, that there's no reason to remain here.
now, how was your feeling when you came back, and how you came back from that stage from your NDE?
Deep depression, feelings of like there's no way possible. Even before I felt inadequate before, there's no way possible that I can trick myself into thinking that this has any value to me. Because not only now does it, before it didn't have value to me because I just was so angry and I took myself kind of out of the game. Now it don't have value to me because I know that there's something better, and this already didn't have value to me. So it's like, how can I reframe my mind to try to participate in this? Yet I had a son that was a child and his mother, so I knew I needed to get back to work. No matter. But in hindsight, I probably should have did a lot of physical therapy first, and a lot of just mental therapy. Counseling, something before I tried to get back in the workforce because I wasn't capable to do that, and I knew it, but I still knew that I needed to make money to pay bills. So I tried, and it didn't give me the space to start really discussing and talking about the spiritual stuff because I was back in the rat race already
Right.
before I could even start figuring out what was wrong. I was back in the rat race, still hurting, still pondering these crazy things, trying to process this experience, and I'm back learning. I'm learning a job, so So that delayed it. It delayed it. It delayed me even talking about it. It delayed me even grounding any understanding from it. But then again, I mentioned the Clubhouse app. One day, I mean, I had listened for a while before I actually even used the app, and then I put the app down for probably 6, 7 months straight. And then one day, I picked up the app and was listening, and I would always go into spiritual rooms, and I heard some people saying stuff that was, I think it was might have been about psychedelics, and they were saying stuff that sounded like what I experienced when I died. And then at the moment, I was like, I'm just gonna share. I'm just gonna share what I experienced, what I remember. And I started talking, and people were like, I mean, they were thanking me so much for just sharing it, um, and but I was still kind of confused, even in sharing it early. The early times that I shared it, it was more like I hadn't grounded anything. I was still kind of like, this is just what happened. And I used to say that all the time. The only thing I can share is what happened. I can do it. I don't have nothing else for you. It's just is what happened. You know what I'm saying? You can take it or you can leave it, but this is what happened.
Now, how did you change when you came back? I mean, you came back from the hospital and your loved ones see you. Do they notice any change with you? And you, somebody told you, hey, what's wrong with you? They,
Yeah,
what's happening? You're not you anymore.
yeah. Well, I don't know. I think that can be painful. I think a painful part of the experience for near death for NDE is because you do feel better, you do feel different, but if you've been a angry person for 35 years, you can't really just shake that off and tell people in 5 interviews, 10 interviews that you're different, and they're gonna just be like, okay, I believe it. They've experienced you as an angry person for 30 plus years, 35 plus years. It's gonna take more than 10 videos for them to be, so they don't treat you any differently most of the time, and sometimes it creates more tension in relationships. And it's strange because I feel better and I don't have a nervous system response to the tension, but I see the tension, and I just wish that it didn't exist. Whereas before, I might have been more willing to behave in a way that actually helped exacerbate the tension. Now I just kind of observe the tension and just wish that it didn't exist.
Did you lose any people in your life after this incident? I mean, when you came back, you're a different person. Maybe they turned their back on
Yeah,
you.
not so much, but it's just some relationships are just strained and getting, and some of them are recently are more strained, than they had been in the past. And when the tension occurs, I can feel and hear that they are communicating with someone who did something to them in the past because it doesn't match the moment. And if I help create that emotional response, or that trigger or that trauma or whatever it is, then I can't just disconnect accountability from that just because I don't feel the same anymore. So even though it's difficult to maintain relationships with people who still see me in ways that I'm really trying to detach from, and I have to accept responsibility for being the person that created that dynamic, or I made them that way, pretty much because they had to figure out how to deal with me in a way that was somehow preserve their own, integrity.
Okay, now most NDEers talk about life review they had. Did you have a life review?
My life review was kind of like the light, it was I had one, I saw it, all of that, but it wasn't a much. It was mostly some deep feelings, very deep feelings that I came back with, and I still have thoughts about some of the stuff. But the bulk of it, it seemed as though the life review for me was an opportunity for me to see the moments that really deeply impacted me, and it was just an opportunity for one final kind of reconciliation or detachment from them versus a being tortured by what you did to somebody. I don't I've made a lot of human mistakes, a lot of um, relationship mistakes, just a lot of stuff that's just basic human stuff. But I never really intentionally was a vindictive or sadistic, went out and tried to hurt people bad all the time. But I was always really ready to respond to it. And if someone was violent towards me, I didn't have a problem responding with it towards them. But as far as being a bully or trying to just antagonize people and bother people. I didn't really pursue that, but my anger and my clarity, the clarity that blinds because you're not right. You just think you're right. So you kind of just torture people with your rightness all the time. So those types of things complicated and may have created very tense relationships with people that they're not getting past just by watching a video. They're not even buying it. You know what I'm saying? So that I'm clear on that. But it takes time to change those types of interactions and relationships. They have to see something different in order for them to think something different of you. You know.
Now, when you were on the other side, did that place felt more real for you than your life on Earth?
Yes, I didn't remember being a human being at all when I was there. The only time I remember being a human being is when I looked back into the emergency room and saw the woman. And I still didn't look at her from my human David self. I looked at her from the perspective of she feels bad that David is dying. I wish I could tell her that this is a beautiful experience. Not, I didn't look at her from a perspective of, it wasn't a human emotion. It was just deep compassion for what she was feeling. It wasn't a human emotion at all. I wanted her to get over the death. I didn't want her to it wasn't anything David centric at all. It was weird, but it was compassion, and that's really all it was. I wanted her to feel better about what was happening. I didn't care about what was happening, but I wanted her to feel better about what was happening, you know.
Okay, who was that person? He was a spiritual being or is it real like a nurse?
I'm not 100% sure to be honest. I initially thought it was a hospital employee. While I was depressed and not really trying to process it or not even having the bandwidth to process it, I just wrote it off as a person that was new there. And maybe their job was just to take account of the time that I died, you know. But I looked at this person most of the time, even when I was in space enjoying the traveling through space, I would always kind of look back at this person and they never took their hands off their face. So even if their job was to turn the mark down, they didn't do it. So they were just hurting deeply that I was dying. And that's really all that I got from them. And so for me, the only person that was going through health issues at the time, they weren't dead yet at that time. They died maybe a month or two later, I think, was my aunt. And she had very likely had near death experiences. And I thought very highly of her strength, her courage, her uniqueness, her total expression to me, even though sometimes her and my mother bumped heads, I thought she was great. I thought she was awesome. I didn't take sides in their bickering because I thought that might have been just something twins might do. So I love my mom's twin sister the same way I love my mom, and at least in my mind, but because I think of I can't think of a thought. I could think of several moments where she made me upset, but I can't think of a period of time where I didn't think highly of her for any sustained period of time. Like I've always thought highly of her. So um, the person that I saw looks like her. It looked like her, and it would make sense why that would hold my attention so much if it was her because I really did love her. But even still, my only effort was for that person to be okay with me leaving. I wasn't doing anything with that person, but I wanted them to hear me, but I couldn't figure out how to communicate with them. But I wanted them to hear me say that this is beautiful and there's no reason for you to feel this way. That's all I wanted, you
Yeah,
know.
I'm thinking
Yeah.
that in that room, emergency room, I'm not trying to minimize everybody else's work, but everybody was doctors and nurses and
Yeah.
stuff. They were all immersed in saving you.
Yeah.
But that's the only person who had real compassion for you. So this is
Yeah.
why it's stuck in your heart.
Yeah, and the person that was holding defibrillators, I could see that person very clearly too, and they had deep compassion. Now, I've since had a person who works in these emergency situations. That's their job. Respond to a comment that I might have made that might have been insensitive because I said that the other one seemed kind of more robotic, but That's not necessarily the case. The case is that they've learned to downregulate their nervous system and their emotional response
Yep.
so that they can stay focused on the work.
Right. Right.
So it's not a judgment, and I didn't even mean for that to come out as a judgment. But the people who did not have that ability to keep their emotional
Yeah.
response, that though they were loud, their color was clearer. I could hear their voice more. Then that was the woman in the back, and that was the man that was actually holding the defibrillator pads. I could see and feel his compassion for me.
Okay.
And yeah,
You see the colors. You saw colors around people.
if anything, because I'm trying to just go back to that space, if anything, it would just be blurred light for the people who I didn't feel anything from, and brighter light and brighter colors for the people who I could feel emotion and compassion from. Yeah.
They were like plain colors, different colors, like a
Yes.
rainbow colors, but plain and being more bright with people who had compassion,
I could
blurred the people
exactly.
who didn't care
Exactly.
much. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Mm.
Okay. Now one question for you, David. Did you have a purpose in life before you had your NDE, and what was your purpose when you came back from the NDE?
I didn't have any real relationship towards any purpose in life at all, and I still kind of look at things differently than probably most people. I think that I was good at certain things before I died, like pattern recognition, explaining deep concepts. I work in IT, so I can kind of help people understand IT concepts easily, even when it seems like it's deep stuff. It's just not deep to me. So, and the same thing with spirituality. I've accumulated probably close to 5,000 books and have been deeply into spirituality since I was 5 or 6 years old. So I have the jargon, the words, the language down because that's been my pretty much my sole focus by most of my experience on this planet. But losing hope and disconnecting from any kind of human, kind of agenda, and then dying, that like I didn't attach any of that back to a purpose that was attached to any kind of human agenda at all. I was just I'm going to try to understand this life as much as I can, and I'm going to die. And ain't nobody going to think anything else of me when I'm gone because I'm just a regular person who's been traumatized and confused and is mad and
Well, I would not agree with you here because right now, by doing these podcasts and doing this, you already bring in a lot of light. A lot of,
yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of understanding for people, who are searching for the truth, who are searching.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That since I've had the near death experience and I've had some response, like reading the comments, like people do not have any clue how the comments are a part of my healing because I felt invisible. I felt like everybody hated me. I felt I was so angry and then to hear people say stuff that you know it's like who are they talking about? They're talking about me. Like
And they
are
were
they for
probably,
real?
a lot of them were white people who you hated. They liked them.
Exactly. And that's even what makes it even more surreal is like because to hear it is like it's almost it's confirmation for one that I my trauma was the filter that I was seeing reality through, and that these people didn't know me. So for me to imagine that strangers just hated me was it's delusional, but I don't know. But to read the comments is it's just changes. It's I can feel if I feel any small piece of losing hope, like if I lose hope in any small capacity, all I have to do is go look at the comments from the videos and I just feel hope and I feel purpose in that. I do feel purpose in that. And then before I never felt purpose at all. But I feel purpose in that because if I can help people have hope and me losing hope and becoming hopeless is what ultimately killed me. If I can help people have hope, then that really means a lot to me. And I can say that I have talked people out of suicide, and just to give people hope when they are at a point where they really are about to end it. In that moment, they're about to end it, and I'm and the conversation ends with them laughing, you know, like that for me, like just whatever it is inside of me that allows me to find the words. I value that. I really value that because I think giving people hope because I died from not having hope is one of the biggest things that I value now.
Yeah, so that's your big contribution. You might not even realize it, but it's a big impact on people. And actually, he and me with this podcast, I'm thinking I'm contributing as well a little bit, by
Yeah,
spreading the information too. And
yeah,
I'm grateful for that opportunity that I can do this.
yeah.
Okay, now let me ask you this. I don't know if you have a book or do you have something course or just you have
I'm
nothing.
nothing. I'm
Okay,
just. This is all new to me. It's all overwhelming.
okay,
I started water.
yeah.
This is all new to me. It's all overwhelming. People are reaching out to help. Um, but I am. I have ideas for courses, and I have ideas for books that I'm working on slowly. And one is the perspective that you gain when you leave your body and just look down and see that is not what you actually leave here as. I want to introduce more in a grounded way just what you actually are. And for me, the simplest way to describe it, and I think it's resonating with people, is that we are attention. You know, and if I can discuss that um, deeply and go into that deeply, and I think that would help people. So I really now, before I just was thinking about writing a book to just share my near death experience, but now I'm thinking about more so grounding the ideas that matter, that'll help other people get clarity in their own life and their own story. And at some point when if I have leisure, I'll write out the whole David story because I don't think it's as important as people understanding the opportunity that they have as a human being, you know.
Yeah, like you mentioned, attention. When you were on the other side, you focus your attention towards something and you became that subject.
Yeah.
And here on Earth, we have probably something similar experience, but it doesn't take that instantaneously. Sorry,
Hmm.
it just takes time. But when you focus on something, it materializes anyway.
Yes.
It's the same analogy, but it's
It's
a
the
little
same.
slower because we are
As
here.
above, so below. As below, so above. It's the same. It's the same thing. We are creators. We're creating in physical form with our thoughts and our desires and our confusion and our ideology and our foolishness. We're creating with all of it. So it would behoove us to learn how to think better and use our attention more responsibly and stop lending it to just anybody who wants our attention, because that's what you create your experience with here. And when you leave here as well, I'm beginning to come to more of a position that there is no here and there. It's just you are awareness and attention. And sometimes you're inside of a body and sometimes you're not.
Do you want, if you like people to contact you, do you have some kind of contact information would you like to share?
Sure. Some people have my other personal email, but it's full of junk mail, and I always miss a lot of messages. So the easiest one is dvd731 at proton.me. That's my email address. And my Facebook page is, facebook.com/dvd731. Um, I have an Instagram page, but I'm gonna finally take all of this stuff seriously and start revamping all of this social media stuff because I didn't I'm just it takes other people for me to realize what it has taken other people for me to realize the possibility or the opportunity that's in front of me in terms of sharing and moving forward and with this message. And I'm going to take it seriously. I mean, even though I'm pretty reclusive, don't really like a lot of attention, um, I'm open to taking this journey, wherever it takes me, and because I want to help people. I want to help people, and like I said, it's just a different way of looking at life, and it has nothing to do with me. We all have the same nervous systems. We all have the same body organs, and we work the same. And there are things that I learned in killing myself, the extremes that I put my body, mind, ego through. You don't have to put yourself to those extremes. I'm the dummy. I'm the fool that took myself to these extremes. I'm the fool who took these ideologies and these polarized positions so seriously that I allowed them to kill me, so that you don't have to be that fool.
Yeah.
You know.
So coming back to the question I asked you about your purpose, this might be your purpose. You came back here to talk about it, and help
Yeah.
others. And one trick question here: how do you define freedom?
For me, it's been a constant process of unlearning, a constant process of unlearning and undoing damage that I did to myself by believing a lot of ideology and a lot of polarized stuff, and trauma based perspectives and philosophies and responses to things that happened to me in this life. So it's been, for me, freedom has been undoing all of that, like it's disconnecting, detaching from the damage that I did and the beliefs that I wrapped around my own perfection. We come here perfect, and then we adopt all of these other labels and names and ideologies and identities and stuff like that. But once you drop the attachment to those, you go back to what you were when you came here, perfect. And that for me is freedom.
Become like a child, like
A
Jesus said.
child, man. Everything is happy. Like when I was in space, detached from the body, it was like, wow, wow. I was like a child.
You're a
And that's
kid.
how I was in my childhood in North Carolina. It was joy and wonder, and I wanted to know everything. And that's what I think freedom is that there's no filters, there's no trauma keeping you from simply just expressing the joy, the goodness, the oneness, that's the love that's in us innately from birth. There's nothing keeping us and holding us back from expressing that.
Yeah.
That's freedom.
Thank you for watching About Freedom Show. I really appreciate you. Click on one of the videos below and don't forget to subscribe.